Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is a statement by Jean Freeman on an update on COVID vaccine and testing programmes. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of her statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Jean Freeman.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I welcome this opportunity to update Parliament both on our extended testing programme and our NHS Scotland COVID-19 vaccination programme. The discovery of a new, more transmittable COVID-19 variant is a bitter blow, but we do have many tools now to fight this virus than we had in March, and vaccination and testing are critical to suppressing the virus and preventing the harms it causes. Presiding Officer, following the announcement last month to expand testing across a number of areas, significant progress has been made. 2 of our 3 new NHS regional lab hubs went live on a phased basis last week, with the West and the North Hub now receiving samples. The East Regional Hub will be operational by the end of January. Processing the weekly tests of 42% of care home staff has now moved to our NHS labs as planned, and we will complete that transition again by the end of January. Testing of all admissions to hospitals is underway to be completed by the end of this month, and twice-weekly testing has been introduced on a phased basis for all patient-facing staff in NHS Scotland's hospitals, COVID-19 assessment centres, the Scottish Ambulance Service and all COVID-19 vaccinators, and is on track to be implemented in full by the end of January next year. All care homes now have the equipment for lateral flow testing, and a rolling programme of training is underway to provide testing for care home visitors with lateral flow testing to support professional visitors to care homes from the beginning of January. All students at Scottish universities and colleges who are going home for the winter break were offered testing during a 2-week testing window from the 30th of November. Over 26,000 students were tested, with 106 positive cases found, a very low positivity rate overall of 0.2%. Testing will be offered on a similar basis to support the staggered start of the university term in January. In January, our Pathfinder testing programmes will begin with the aim of developing a sustainable programme of asymptomatic testing amongst school staff, working closely with a number of local authorities and volunteer schools to develop detailed plans. The first model will involve in-school testing using lateral flow devices. The second model involves at-home PCR testing using the satellite testing channel that has previously been used in the care home sector. We expect these pilots to help inform the development of a scalable, sustainable approach to asymptomatic testing of school staff at the earliest opportunity. And we have completed our community testing pilots. Between 26th of November and the 9th of December, we targeted testing resources at 8 communities in Scotland with stubbornly high prevalence levels of the virus as part of a community testing pilot. This involved the deployment of 6 mobile testing units, over 4,000 home test kits, and the establishment of the asymptomatic test site using lateral flow devices in Johnson. Over the course of the pilot, 22,133 tests were completed and 850 positive cases identified, an overall positivity rate of 3.8%. So we will now expand this strategic and targeted use of testing through a community testing programme in January. Delivered in partnership with local authorities, we hope to have their proposals in the early part of that month for those communities where this approach will have the greatest impact. With local authorities, we intend to build on this intense targeted period of testing to wrap around a further public health package in full, including continued offer of support for those asked to isolate, the use of the Self-Isolation Support Grant, Local Self-Isolation Assistance Service and the National Assistance Helpline, and ensuring that compliance with NPIs in vulnerable settings, including schools, care homes and employment settings, are being followed and offering support where we need to. Finally, I'm pleased that following work with the Royal Mail, all 82 mainland postcode areas now have access to home test kits, and we've met our commitment of 22 local test sites by the end of this year. And from January, we will have access to an additional 14 mobile testing units. Turning now to our vaccination programme, Our NHS Scotland vaccination programme began on the 8th of December. In the period to the 20th of December, 56,676 people received their first dose. This includes care home residents and staff and patient-facing NHS staff. Depending on supply delivery, we will complete the second dose vaccinations to residents in care homes for older people and their carers and those frontline health and care staff during January. I've previously outlined the challenges in delivering the Pfizer vaccine, such as stability in transportation, storage requirements and pack sizes. These issues have limited our capacity to take the vaccine everywhere it is needed. Scottish Government health officials, our boards and the MHRA have worked to mitigate these issues and help streamline our process of deploying the vaccines. Thanks to their efforts, we are now able to safely reduce pack size, which has allowed the care home programme to begin, and the transport challenges of getting the vaccine to all of our islands has been resolved. We anticipate receiving a total of 172,575 doses of the Pfizer vaccine by the end of this week, 50% of which we will retain so that we can be sure to give those vaccinated the second dose after the 21 days required. A key area that would help streamline the process further is predictability of delivery. But this is not in our gift. Safety is a paramount concern, and there is a rigorous process of safety checks between the vaccine leaving the factory in Belgium, arriving in the UK and then arriving in Scotland. These checks mean that while we know when the vaccine leaves the factory, we cannot be certain of the date we will receive it. This is a challenge for our forward planning of vaccine appointments, but it is one we share across all 4 nations of the UK, and we're working together to resolve this with the regulator and the distributor. And I expect at my normal weekly meeting of the 4-nation health ministers tomorrow, that will be another item that we will continue to discuss and pursue. The JCVI's recommendation for the delivery of a COVID-19 vaccine is that prioritisation should first be given to those with the greatest clinical need. Taken together, vaccinating that JCVI list will help reduce around 99% of preventable mortality from COVID-19. This is clearly a compelling rationale, and it is right that we follow this advice. Those who are clinically extremely vulnerable are high on the JCVI prioritisation list, alongside those aged 70 or over. However, I understand the concern around those who are terminally ill, who want, if at all possible, to receive the vaccine earlier. Both Matt Hancock and I have now written to JCVI asking them for further consideration and clarity on this group for all the reasons that I know members will understand. Right now, we have access to just one vaccine. In the near future, we hope that it will be 2. The new AstraZeneca vaccine, should it get MHRA approval, does not need to be stored at ultra-low temperatures and is easier to transport. That means that we will be able to deploy it in far wider settings than has been the case for Pfizer. Dependent on JCVI advice, we will likely use it to prioritise vaccination of the over 80s who are not care home residents, and for this group to be largely vaccinated in GP settings. Should the AstraZeneca vaccine be approved before the end of this calendar year, then we anticipate that we will be able to commence vaccination from primary care locations from Monday, the 11th of January. Vaccine supplies permitting, we aim to have vaccinated all those on the JCVI prioritisation list in the spring. Once we've completed this group, and again dependent on supplies, we will commence vaccination of the rest of the population. The dedicated officials and NHS staff who have taken forward the vaccine programme have done remarkable work at pace, and I'm grateful to them for it. We said on December the 3rd that, dependent on supply, we would begin on the 8th of December, and we did. We said that we would begin vaccination of care homes on the 14th, and again we did. All of that is down to their hard work. And when we have more vaccines and greater number of doses available to us, these public service servants stand ready to deliver once more. Members will receive today initial board maps of primary care and other vaccination centres in their area to meet this scale-up alongside the use of mobile units where those are needed. We're also looking at the use of larger centres in heavily populated areas such as Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen and Lanarkshire to supplement these local and mobile solutions for those in remote and rural areas and those with particular requirements. Alongside this, we are building a national scheduling tool which will support wider cohorts of the population to schedule their appointments and is on track for the delivery by the end of January. While limitations with vaccine supply have meant a lower initial workforce requirement for the early weeks of the programme, we've nevertheless been keen to ensure we continue to ramp up capacity. We currently have 1,729 registered vaccinators and 4,000 attended national training events on the delivery of the Pfizer vaccine. So to deliver on our intention of concluding vaccination of those on that priority list in the spring, where our workforce modelling shows a requirement for around 1,400 vaccinators and 600 support staff, we remain confident in our workforce supply. We're also exploring all offers of assistance from individuals across organisations, for which we are very grateful. I know the wait for many to get the vaccine will be an anxious one. I hope they can be assured that we will contact you as soon as we have the vaccine supply and as soon as we reach your eligible group. It's also essential, though, that once you've been contacted, you attend your first vaccination and that you return for your second dose. Presiding Officer, a vaccination programme of this scale is unprecedented and it is a significant logistical challenge requiring a major nationwide effort. So far, we have secured the enthusiastic support of many partners across our public sector. But it is a challenge that we continue to take with optimism and determination to succeed for Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we will move on to the next item of business. It would be helpful if members who wish to ask a question were to press the request to speak buttons now. And I call on Donald Cameron.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of her statement, and I welcome the news that over 56,000 people have been vaccinated so far, and I pay tribute to our frontline NHS and social care staff who are helping to deliver this. Following the news about the new strain of COVID-19, I'm sure any update on the impact of that new strain on the delivery of the vaccination programme would be appreciated. The Cabinet Secretary mentions that the over 80s who are not in care homes will be largely vaccinated in GP settings. However, previously she has said that GP surgeries will not be significantly involved in the vaccination programme so that they can continue to deliver other services. So could I ask her for clarification around the role of GP in the vaccination programme and how their participation will affect the ongoing availability of primary care? Secondly, on another specific matter, she'll be aware of the campaign by Fred Banning, who is suffering from terminal cancer, to give people receiving palliative care increased priority for the vaccine, and she mentions this issue in her statement. Can she provide any further update on this difficult issue?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thanks very much. On the final question from Mr Cameron, I can't provide any more information than I have so far. Both, as I said, Matt Hancock and I have written to JCVI for their consideration and any further advice they want to offer. As soon as we have that, then of course I'll update members in what has now become a regular weekly update to members when we have new information to impart. And again, I expect that we will discuss this, the four health ministers, when we meet tomorrow. In terms of the role of GPs, we've been working very closely with the Royal College of General Practitioners and the BMA, both to ensure that we can have that primary care delivered over 80s vaccination programme, partly through primary care physical settings, but also through primary care staff delivering to members in that age group who live at home and for whom vaccination at home may be the most appropriate way of delivering it to them. The GPs also will volunteer in our vaccination centres where that is what they choose to do, and we have reached an agreement with them in terms of the overall cost of that. The GP practices are taking very careful consideration about how they can manage through extended hours or by other means the vaccination programme and maintaining their normal primary care service provision. And I am confident that RCGP and the BMA are looking at that very closely to ensure that they quite rightly have the concern that Mr Cameron has and I do to make sure that standard normal GP services are maintained whilst this additional work is underway. And in terms of the other question he asked about this new variation of concern, as it has now been categorised, this new variant on COVID-19. A great deal of work is underway to ensure that the current vaccines can deal with this virus. The expectation is that they can. But of course, vaccine researchers and manufacturers are well accustomed to dealing with variation in infection strains. They do that almost every year with respect to the flu virus, which mutates and changes its strains as each year passes, and there are changes then in the vaccine and its deployment that we use for the seasonal flu programme. So that work is underway, but at this point there is no evidence to suggest that the current vaccines will not be effective against this new strain, and of course the key is to get on and vaccinate as many people as quickly as we can.
I call on Monica Lim.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of her statement and also welcome Mary Gouge onto her new role as Public Health Minister. The Government's target was to have a daily testing capacity of up to 65,000 tests by the end of December. Daily testing numbers are still averaging only around 20,000 a day. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if delivery plans for her intended capacity are still on track? And she's well aware that we have worried care at home staff who want to get testing soon. So if we have spare capacity, can that be used to reassure our care at home staff? And in terms of a local issue, I'm aware that in NHS Lanarkshire, last week, only half of our eligible staff who work in long-stay old-age psychiatry and learning disability wards were tested. And around half of those who weren't tested, it's because the staff declined to test. Is the Cabinet Secretary keeping a close eye on this? What more can be done to build staff confidence and reassure people that the testing is important for both keeping staff safe but also patients?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thanks very much. I'm grateful to Ms Lennon. Really important questions. In terms of that 65,000 figure, that was a split, of course, between us and our expanding NHS capacity and the Lighthouse expanding their capacity. And even though we don't yet have the East Hub online, largely because of building issues around fire safety and so on that we need to fix, we still believe that we will be on track collectively to meet that 65,000. In terms of care at home staff, you're absolutely right about the importance of extending testing to them. And we remain, from memory, I believe it is from the early part of January, we intend to extend regular testing, asymptomatic testing, to care at home staff. I think, as I said before, and Ms Lennon will be well aware of this, a more complex group of staff to reach on a regular weekly basis and to be able to input the data from those tests, because they're not either in a hospital setting or a care home setting. But with COSLA and our other partners, we've worked through how we might do that, and we will phase that rollout, again, starting with the areas where the virus has the highest prevalence and working our way through. And we'll start that from mid-January. But on that and on other matters, I commit, as I always do, to ensuring that members are kept up to date. And if there are changes between now and the Parliament returning after recess, then I will write to all members with any of those changes, but update as soon as we're all back after recess. You're right too about the point about decline to test. We saw that initially when we rolled out, we saw a significant proportion of that initially when we rolled out weekly testing to care home staff. And what we undertook then with Scottish Care providers and our colleagues in the unions was a programme of persistent and consistent information, some short videos about the importance of it, why to do it, what not to be worried about, some surgery work to address people's concerns around it, and we've seen that number significantly drop. We see some of that reluctance to be tested on a weekly basis, and I kind of understand why. It's not the easiest test to undertake. It is intrusive from some of our NHS staff, and again, using a similar approach but working very closely with our unions and our boards, and led by our Chief Nursing Officer, we're looking to see what more we need to do there to reduce that number. Final point to make on this is we always have to remember, against the eligible number and those tested, set aside decline to test, you will always have a difference, because you could have 50 staff eligible in a particular area, but at any one time, a number of them may be off because of ill health, because of maternity leave. So you never get 100% there, but the decline to test figure is the number to pay real attention to, and we are doing that.
Thank you. I call Annabel Ewing to be followed by Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. With regard to the Scottish Government's new vaccine app, can the Cabinet Secretary advise what role it could play in ensuring that people are fully informed about the vaccine before it is administered? And for those who may not use an app, which I would have to say would comprise many people in my Cowdenbeath constituency, how will the Scottish Government ensure that this vital information is equally accessible?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the vaccine management tool is for staff. It's not a tool that is there for citizens to use, either for engagement or for information sharing. The point of the vaccine management tool is that it allows staff to easily record all the details of each vaccination. The patient's CAI number, the arm that you were vaccinated in, the vaccine type and batch number that was used, all of that goes in, so that when you return, and that goes onto your medical records, so that when you return for your second dose, you can be checked against all of that. So it is a management tool, but it's actually also primarily a safety tool to make sure that we meet all the right clinical governance protocols, and it's an additional safety measure and reassurance for individuals. We have printed and online material available for patients, and so when people arrive, they are given a patient information leaflet and time taken to explain to them everything they want to know, answer all their questions, so that they can give informed consent to being vaccinated. But we will also be distributing a household leaflet to everyone from the 5th of January, a household door drop, every household in the country, which explains about the vaccination programme, answers safety questions and other concerns people might have, what to expect when you get called, and that list, so you have an idea about where you are on the list, with the helpline number 2, of course, so you can phone up and ask for more information.
Maurice Corrie, to be followed by Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too would like to welcome Marie Goujon into her new ministerial role, and welcome to that. Deputy Presiding Officer, the NHS Dumfries and Galloway say that care home staff and residents will have received their dose of the COVID-19 vaccine by Christmas Eve. This is welcome news indeed, but it comes alongside one care home operator describing the programme as so far hugely frustrating and very disappointing. Can the Cabinet Secretary confirm when all care home staff and residents across Scotland will have received their first dose?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, I can't give a definite number on that or a definite date on that, because, as I keep saying, it is dependent on vaccination supply. But and I've explained the problem we have across the 4 nations of the UK with the predictability of delivery, where we know when the vaccine leaves the factory, Pfizer factory in Belgium, but we can't say 4 days from that date it will be with us in Scotland, because that varies depending on those different safety checks that have to be gone through before it reaches us. It applies to all 4 nations. We're all trying to work with MHRA and our distributors to smooth that process down and make it much more predictable, so that we can forward plan on a better basis. But until we do that, it's not possible to be definitive about specific dates by which certain things will be done. However, what I can say is what I said in my statement, is that significant progress is being made. We continue to work our way around all those care homes and the staff in them and the residents, and intend to have completed the second dose by the end of January. So that's the first dose and the second dose. Remember too, when I give you numbers about the volume of doses we expect to receive, you need to halve that for the number of people we can then vaccinate, because MHRA requires us to hold back 50%, so we've got the second dose for when we need to go back to people. In terms of the provider that you reference, I don't know who that is. Nobody has raised that with me. If you want to advise me of that provider's particular concerns, then I'm very happy to look at it. I actually think the delivery across our boards of a vaccination programme that began on the 8th of December, a very short time ago, has been remarkable for the smoothness and the coverage that they have reached so far. And depending on vaccine supply, we will simply keep scaling that up, vaccinating more and more people along with the JCVI advice.
I have a number of people still hoping to ask questions, so can I ask for succinct questions and answers, please, going forward? Kenneth?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the Cabinet Secretary's statement and appreciate her comments regarding the difficulties in distributing the vaccine to remote and island communities, and these have now been resolved. As such communities often have a high percentage of older people, including Arran and Cumbria in my constituency, is a catch-up programme being implemented to ensure vulnerable islanders who would have already been vaccinated if they lived on the mainland will now receive it?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, there is a catch-up programme. There's a catch-up programme for precisely that situation that Mr Gibson references, but also, inevitably, as we do with flu vaccines, a catch-up programme where you don't get everyone at the one time. You may go into a care home and you can't vaccinate every resident. Someone may be unwell and it's not appropriate. So that simply demonstrates the complexity of this exercise, because as you go out to do 100 people who are over 80, you may only actually be able to vaccinate 75. You need to remember the 25 and get back round and do them the second time. So it is a complex programme, but there will always be catch-up programmes and mop-ups that are part of the process.
Pauline McNeill, to be followed by Mark Ruskell.
Sincere thanks to all involved in this incredible programme. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how the Scottish Government will decide who gets which vaccine, given that there are slightly differences in effectiveness and if they're being rolled out in parallel? And can the Cabinet Secretary indicate if there's a planning date next year for reaching around 76% of the population, which is the figure which is expected to be where we might reach some immunity?
Cabinet Secretary.
So on the last question, no, I can't give a planning date on that. I understand why you ask it, and I'd like to be able to do it. But like everything else, it depends on vaccine approval and then the rollout and the delivery of those vaccines, remembering that the manufacturers of the vaccines are delivering and supplying the whole world on this. And although on behalf of all four nations, the UK has forward purchased a significant volume, more than is needed, delivery and production schedules inevitably are important factors in all of that. In terms of which vaccine will be used for which cohorts of individuals, we won't determine that. What we will do is follow the advice of the JCVI, the Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisation, and whatever caveats MHRA may put around their authorisation to use a vaccine. So that, as we know in Pfizer, there's a very specific caveat around women who are pregnant. There's now an additional requirement about a 15-minute sit down after you've been vaccinated, just to make sure that everything's okay before you leave and go off about your business. So we get that. I expect that we'll have comparable caveats around MHRA approval and then JCVI advice for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine when it comes forward, and the Moderna one, which is what we expect to be the third one coming through. But we have to wait for those and then we apply it.
Mark Ruskell, to be followed by Alec Cole-Hamilton.
As asymptomatic testing increases, it will inevitably result in more people needing to self-isolate. With the self-isolation support grant, has the government considered making that unconditional so that more people can afford to do the right thing? And with the new variant of the virus, it does appear that it's making people infectious for longer. Will that have an impact on the length of time that people need to self-isolate and the need for their support during that time?
Cabinet Secretary.
So on both points, of course, are linked, and they're both important. Just on Mr Ruskell's last point, there is a number of areas of the new variant which are not yet confirmed. What we know for sure is that it is more infectious. It infects more people and it does it quicker than what we have been used to when COVID-19 first appeared. But there are a number of other possible impacts of that that we do not know yet, and a great deal of work by scientists is underway to try and confirm some of that, including your point about are you really infectious for longer? And taking both together, though, and regardless, your point about the self-isolation support grant is a point well made, and there is consideration being given to what more can we do to support people to self-isolate, remembering now we've reduced the time period, of course, with clinical advice to 10 days, but nonetheless, that is still an ask, a significant ask of individuals, and it has implications in your domestic circumstances in a whole number of different ways. So we continue to look at what more can we do in order to help people do what we need them to do for themselves, but also for all of us, because it's critical to breaking those chains of transmission.
Alice Cole-Hamilton, followed by Shona Robertson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. There have already been reports of several hundred missed appointments for the vaccine. Given the fragility of the vaccine, can the Cabinet Secretary confirm whether these doses are then wasted or redeployed? And secondly, when we come to vaccinate the remainder of the population in the spring or early summer, can she give us some detail about how that process will operate equitably? Because everyone will want that vaccine yesterday, and some people may not be online and not able to access portals for booking in.
Cabinet Secretary.
So on the latter question, once we've worked our way through, and our objective is that we will have completed that JCVI list in the spring of this year, we then move, of course, to those under 50. And at that point, we expect over time the JCVI to give us further advice about any prioritisation that we should follow for that final group of the adult population. So we'll be able to answer that part of Mr Cole-Hamilton's question more definitively at that point. And we will, of course, look to ensure, as we do, that we can follow that advice in an equitable manner. In terms of missed appointments and is vaccine wasted, certainly I would encourage everyone not to miss your appointment. If you can't make it for some reason, then please get in touch using the information you'll have been given and rearrange that appointment. We're very happy to rearrange appointments, but missed appointments simply mean that there's somebody else who could have been vaccinated and wasn't on that day at that time. It doesn't necessarily increase wastage, though, because each vial, as you know, is then made up with sodium chloride into 5 doses. So you can continue and you can keep those doses for a limited amount of time in normal 2 to 8 degrees refrigerated conditions. So if I don't turn up, but Mr Cole-Hamilton is next in line, the dose will simply be used for him, and on we go. I will turn up, by the way, when my time comes, both times. So it doesn't necessarily equate X number of missed appointments is X amount of wasted dosages. But there is always a risk that if you were the last appointment of the day, there's no one else to use that vial with, that dose with. And that then is a wasted dose. And the more we can minimise wastage, the more people we can vaccinate quicker.
Shona Robertson, followed by Jamie Green.
Thank you. Can I add my thanks for the incredible efforts of all those involved? As I understand, the initial guidance on the rollout of the vaccine indicated that unpaid carers would be placed in the priority group. I just want to ask the Cabinet Secretary to provide some clarity around when and how unpaid carers will receive the vaccine.
Cabinet Secretary.
Today, all members will receive what's becoming the weekly letter from us to you. And in this week's, we give you the JCVI priority list and their definition of what they mean by residents in the priority number 1 of their whole list, residents and workers in care homes for older people, who they're talking about there. And in that list, you will see at number 6, unpaid carers, including all adult carers and young carers aged 16 to 18. So they are where we said they would be. In terms of how will we reach them, we're using a number of different channels to do that. Obviously, our colleagues in the Social Security Agency in Scotland can make sure that those who are receiving carers allowance are advised when we get to that stage of the programme without giving away any confidential information. We use third sector organisations, we'll use social media and other news channels, and of course our GP and primary care practices will be of assistance to us. And we'll try and maximise the reach that we have to that group of people, as well as some national media to encourage them to get in touch and get their appointment booked.
Jamie Green, to be followed by Fulton McGregor.
Thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to elaborate on the large vaccination centres mentioned in her statement in urban and populated areas? Where will they be? When will they come online? And who will staff them? In the interest of time, I'd be happy to have that later in writing. And can we offer reassurance to recipients of the vaccine that they will be vaccinated against this new strain of the virus that we're also incredibly concerned about?
Cabinet Secretary.
So right at the moment, as I said, just to answer the last point first, there's a great deal of work underway to get confirmation, more confirmation around aspects of this new strain. But there is no evidence at this point to suggest that the current vaccinations will not be effective against that new strain. In terms of large vaccination centres, other than the cities that I talked about, I'm very happy to write to Mr Green and to share that with all members about the kind of centres that we're looking at. And that is when we start moving into the 60-year-old and below population, where we're looking at large numbers, where we believe people will be more easily able to go to large centres, drive-through and walk-through centres. But we're looking at a range of possibilities, and as we narrow that down, then we'll give members much more information on that.
And finally, Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, President Officer. Cabinet Secretary, I've been contacted by constituents in the Christenen part of my constituency, which includes the small towns of Gartcosh, Moodiesburn, Stapes, Auchenlock and, of course, Christenen itself. There are some worries that access to the vaccine will be difficult for vulnerable members of these communities that don't have access to a car. I have to say I'm in contact with NHS Lanarkshire about this, and there have been very helpful conversations, and they are working to address these concerns. But I wanted to ask if there's any reassurance you can give my constituents in these communities that vaccinations will happen as locally as possible, and they will be fully supported to access these where transport is a barrier.
Cabinet Secretary.
I can give that assurance. Undoubtedly, I'm glad NHS Lanarkshire have been helpful to Mr McGregor. Today, as I said, all members will receive this along with that letter, which is essentially the first set of board-by-board maps of where those local centres will be for the over 80s and on phase, but we will continue to add to those. And of course, those mobile vaccination units are not just for remote and rural areas, they're for urban areas where we still have villages and also citizens in our communities for whom access to city centres or town centres remains difficult. They don't have their own transport, and public transport is not readily available. I've got lots of that in my own constituency, so I well understand the difficulty. We will do everything we can to make sure that vaccination is as local as possible, as accessible as possible, as easy to access as you possibly can, because we need people to come forward for their vaccination, come back for the second dose, so that we can vaccinate the largest number of the adult population that we can reach in Scotland.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes questions on the statement, and I will now suspend this meeting briefly in advance of the next item of business.